Welcome back. This is our second video on the concept of iteration, and in this video what we're going to do is look at the concept of a pretest loop and then take a look at our first iteration structure in processing, which is called the while loop. Okay? So remember, looping or iteration structures, what those are intended to do is allow us to repeat blocks of code over and over and over again based on the value of some Boolean expression. Well, in a pretest loop, that Boolean expression, the control expression, is evaluated first at the top of the loop before the actual body of code or block of code that we're trying to repeat is ever executed. So one thing that implies is that it's possible that the body of the loop never happens, right? If the control expression is false, then we'll skip the body of the loop entirely. Okay, so in a pretest loop, the body of the loop may never happen, depending on the value of the control expression. So here is a flowchart that explains what our while loop looks like. We have our terminators here at the beginning and the end. We flow in, and if you look at this, it sort of looks like a one-armed if statement, and really the only difference is this line. Okay, in a one-armed if, we'd hit the control expression. If it was true, we'd evaluate the if statement, and then we'd flow out to the first statement after the if. In this case, and why we get the concept of a loop, we do the control expression. If it's true, we execute the loop body, and then we go back and check the control expression again. So as long as that control expression is true, we will loop in this circle here, performing the loop body over and over and over again. But if the control expression returns false, then we skip the loop body and proceed to the first statement after the while loop. Okay? And again, it's a pretest loop because if I flow into the structure and evaluate the control expression and it turns out to be false, then I never do the loop body and I go directly to the first statement after the while loop. Okay? Now, picking up on the last thing from the previous video, if I never have anything that changes the value of this control expression, then I'm going to be stuck inside this loop forever. And I'll never get out, because if it's true to begin with and the loop body never changes it, then there's nothing to get me out of the loop. So something inside here has to affect the value of the control expression, so eventually it becomes false so that I can get out of the loop. Okay? So that's our flowchart for the while loop. Let's look at its syntax. Syntax is very similar also to the if statement, except we have the word while instead of if. So while, and then this expression has to evaluate to a Boolean, and if that expression's true, I execute the loop body. If it's false, then we skip and start at the end of the while, resume doing code there. Now, just as if, or as for the if statement or switch, I guess really just the if, it's possible to have a while loop that doesn't have curly brackets for the loop body if we only have one statement here. But our style will be to always have curly brackets, even when we don't necessarily need them, and that will prevent us from making an error. Okay? So in our situation, we're always going to include the curly brackets, even if there's only one statement after the while. Okay, so now let's do a little bit more discussion here about when the while loop is good to use. We're going to use our while loop when we're not in a situation where we're counting necessarily or basing the loop on numbers. So if we don't know in advance how many times the loop is going to execute, that would be a good place to use a while. Okay? Usually in that situation what happens is we have the loop execute until some sentinel value is seen, and a sentinel value is a value that is sort of a special value that we're on the lookout for, that marks the end of the process somehow. Okay? So for example, here's what we'll work on. This is the image or the screen that we're going to try to create. And I'll go to the description and then we'll pop back to the screen to look at it. Our description is, we're going to write a processing sketch or program that draws a diagonal trail of red circles leading up and to the right from the mouse location. Each of the circles should be 10 pixels in diameter, 30 pixels between each circle center, and we're just going to keep drawing until they reach the top or the right side of the display window. Okay, so in this diagram here, the mouse pointer is at this location, and my trail of circles goes up diagonally from there. Each circle is 10 pixels, and there's 30 pixels between each. Okay? Now what makes this a good example for the while loop is that I don't know how many circles I need to draw when I write the program, because I don't know where the user will have their mouse pointer. If I have the mouse pointer way down here, then I'm going to have as many circles as I can have all the way across. On the other hand, if I have the mouse pointer up here, I'd only have 1 or 2 circles. So that's a good situation for a while loop because it's not necessarily counting. It's just go until a sentinel value of reaching the edge of the screen is achieved. Alright, so that's going to be our practice for this, and in our next quick video we'll go ahead and develop that application. So next up is using the while loop.